Hi everyone, ready to do the tutorial on the enema kit. So lots and lots to know, lots I want to convey. Where to begin? Let's just go through each thing one at a time. The first is, this is the one I select, the Cara enema kit. It's called the Fountain Syringe model. The Fountain Syringe simply means that it enables you to keep on pouring the water in through the top as opposed to unscrewing the bottle, which most enema kits are, most bag enemas are like a water bottle with the attachment. The regular Cara enema kit is like that, but the Fountain Syringe is not. The Fountain Syringe enables you to just keep on refilling, which is when you're, in the midst of your enema, you'll understand why that's so valuable. You don't want to have to stop, turn it over, unscrew it, and then fill the water, and then screw it back and turn it back over again. This just removes a lot of hassles. So that's the first thing. Then in terms of this little hook, it's going to go on the bathroom door or onto a towel rack. Basically, the height of a doorknob is the ideal height. The towel rack is usually around the same height. I just don't want to put it on the doorknob unless the door is locked. Otherwise, someone's going to open the door and the enema is going to go flying. So just keep that in mind. But I would definitely lock the door when you're doing your enema. Anyway, I think you'll just be more relaxed. All right. Next thing is, when you initially fill the enema bag, you want to make sure that there's no air in the enema tube, in this tubing. So you want to fill the bag about halfway, and then you're going to release the valve just so that the water can release, and you're going to just release it either into the sink or the toilet or into something that enables it to start flowing and release any air that might be stuck in the tube itself or inside the enema bag. And then once the water's flowing, you can continue to use the enema. You can continue to fill it so it reaches the top, and then go about using it. So now it's hooked on the door, it's full, there's no air in the tubing, and then you're going to lubricate the tip very, very well so that it will go in easily. And when I say very well, actually this material is already smooth as it is. You don't need that much. Just a little coconut oil will be fine. And then you're going to go ahead and lay on your left side. Lie on some towels, make sure there's enough under you, a little pillow for your head, maybe not a regular pillow, maybe a towel pillow, because things can get wet, they can get messy, they can splash. You might have forgotten to close the valve. There's a little valve here. If it doesn't close all the way, the water will leak out. So that's something that really you should be sure about. When you put it together, put the valve toward the end, toward the nozzle, because otherwise, if it's up too high, it's going to be hard to reach to stop the water. You want to be able to stop it very close to where the speculum is. And then, again, lie on your left side. That's the way a beginner should always start. Later on, when you become really proficient with your enemas, you can start by laying on your back. But in the beginning, start on your left side. You want to make sure that this down here a little bit more, this left side is emptying, and that's what you're going to hit first. So if that part is full and you lie on your back, it's not going to come out as readily. It can when you're, again, a more, let's say, veteran enema taker. But in the beginning, it's better to lie on your left side, let the water reach there, and just hold the water for, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, just maybe 15, 20 Mississippi, and it's probably going to be enough for your first time for the first round. Then, if you feel like you can take more, take more. And then when you feel the urge to go, you just clamp this, and you stand up, and you go to the toilet. The enema is sometimes jokingly called the enemy because it's not that much fun to have this up-down action. It's effective, and it's necessary if you don't have access to a professional colon hydrotherapist or an enlightener, which are seamless. So both the enlightener and your professional session will be, in most cases, like the Woods gravity method, which is the one I most recommend, will be simultaneous flow. The water's entering as the waste is leaving, so there's no up and down. It's absolutely consistent. You don't have to do anything other than stand there if you're using the enlightener and pulse the tube and do holds while the waste leaves, or in your session with the Woods gravity therapist, you're just lying down the whole time and everything's moving in every way. But with the enema, you do have to get up and down a fair amount. Depending on how much water you can hold and for how long, you'll be getting up and down relative to that. So if you if you can take in a good amount of water and sit with that amount of water for a few minutes, then you're going to reconstitute a lot of waste and have really big releases. But not everyone can hold that much water, and even if you take a good bit of the enema bag, like say you take even 3/4 or the whole bag, you might not be able to sit with it for very long. So that's because you have the peristalsis kicking in that's urging your body to go. So at that point, when you feel that urgency to go, you better get up and go, otherwise you might miss the boat. And I don't mean boat. You gotta go when you gotta go. So don't overhold. Don't try to take in more than you can handle, and don't try to hold it for longer than you can. Ever so slightly, you want to push the envelope, because you want to make sure you're getting enough water in and that you're holding it, for a good amount of time. But there are times when you might just feel the water going in and have to go. There might be times when you've filled as much as you can, but you feel fine, and you're lying there for 20 seconds and you've got to go. So what I found is best is just to go when the urgency hits, and you'll just have to do more fills. It's better to do it that way than to push and then wind up having a mess, or not feeling well, or feeling like you're pushing things where they shouldn't be pushed. So that's my take on that. You may wind up, give yourself 45 minutes to an hour, just because it can take a while to get the waste that's further along in the intestine, the transverse. So you've got your sigmoid, your transverse colon, and your cecum, which is on the right. So I know everything's reversed in the camera, but this is my right. So I've got my cecum on my right, I've got my sigmoid on my left, which is the matter that's going to go first, and then I've got my transverse colon going across the top. And the more bags you do, the more you're going to get to reconstitute that waste matter in the transverse colon. And when that gets adequately reconstituted, it's going to encourage the peristalsis to kick in, and that waste is going to want to leave. The waste will not leave until the water saturates it adequately to the point where it gets kinetic again. Waste that's dry is not kinetic. This is why if you're constipated, your waste is dry, you're not going to go unless you do something like this. We don't want to take laxatives, because laxatives just act as an agitant, an aggravator. And so you wind up kicking off a lot of agitated waste, but the deeper waste is still in the tissue. So there's a lot of water and loose stool, and that's not actually the dense waste that's really going to make you feel better and going to change your life. So that's why laxatives are really pointless. Anything that acts as laxative, even taking Epsom salts internally, these are all they just agitate the body. The body doesn't want them. So in trying to get rid of them, it gets rid of anything that might be attached to it. So you have a release, but it's not the kind of release we're looking for. We're looking for a lot of heavy matter. We're looking for, big bowel movements to come through. And they will when that waste gets reconstituted with all this water. So it may be a matter of filling this 5 or 6 times in the course of 45 minutes to an hour. You lie down, you fill, you take what you can, you see how the body responds. But every time you're taking in that water, it's giving the body, it's giving the intestine the opportunity to drink more of it into that dried waste. So the more it absorbs into the waste, the more that waste gets wet, and in its moisture, it becomes kinetic. That's the order of operations. So don't feel discouraged if you've used 3 or 4 bags and you haven't had a lot come. That water is getting into the tissue. It's getting into the waste. And there will be a result, but sometimes you have to hang out a little bit for it. Sometimes it doesn't happen immediately because of the density and dryness of what's in your intestine. So you'll take the time you need. Make sure you give it enough bags to go through. Put on a podcast. Do something fun, because it can take a while. It's a lot easier in every way with the Enlightener, because everything's moving simultaneously, and you pretty much know that the first 20 minutes are going to pour waste, and then you sometimes get a little bit of a gap of a couple of minutes, and then there's more waste and gas, and then more waste to come, and you hit the cecum when you feel that hot rush of all the more recent waste go, and you know you've done a thorough evacuation of the colon. The enema is there for basically to get your head around the irrigation of the colon, and to have something no matter what. So if you're on a desert island and there is nothing to hook anything up to and no running water, you can always do a freshwater enema. It's one of those things that it's just a great invention. It's essential. Everyone should have one. But we don't want to use them long term. We don't want them to be the thing when you get into serious deep tissue cleansing and you're really calling up deep waste and you want to be using the water in the intestine to remove that waste on a very regular basis. You don't want to have to turn to the enema. Some people do. I know people who have been very successful in long-term cleansing with just an enema bag, and that's great. And if they're getting waste out and you do become more efficient with it, the more you use it, you become just more adept with it. But it's really, again, it's no fun to be getting up and down. So it's preferable not to make it your steady go-to, but it's very important to use it either to be beginning or in intervals when it's really your best bet. So in terms of adding anything to the enema water, this is a very interesting topic. When I was first getting into colonics, I would go to a place in Columbus Circle in New York where they would do lots of extra things. They'd do chlorophyll, they'd do coffee, they would, I don't know, just do like maybe 3 or 4 different, what are they called, implants. So it's called an implant when you're putting something other than water, using the enema for something other than water. And often a person would do an implant, and if they were at home, and I've done this many times, way back in my early days, where you take a regular enema, the enema bottles, the small enema bottles that you buy at the chemist, what they call the chemist here, the drugstore, and you empty its contents, and then you fill it with something like wheatgrass juice, for example, and then you implant that wheatgrass juice, and you sit with it for a very long time. You may try and sit with it for a half an hour, the coffee, you try and sit with for about 15 minutes at least, and that's fine, and it's something that can be helpful. I'm definitely not going to knock it at all. Any of the implants, chlorophyll implants, wheatgrass implants, coffee implants. But what's the most important thing to understand about the enemas or about colon cleansing period is it's about the quantity of waste you remove. It's about huge amounts of waste leaving. And you see this more when you're working with the Woods method or with the Enlightener, where there's it just pulls and pulls and pulls for the better part of 45 minutes to an hour, pouring out of you. That is the waste that's going to set you free. That's the quantity that needs to be leaving on a regular basis, because nobody understands until they do this work how much waste is in the tissues. And that's, again, because of the autophagy that's not happening for decades. There's all this backup, so much backup, the cellular waste on top of the current waste, on top of the post-putrefactive waste, and it's permeated throughout the entire organism. So that's the kind of quantity we're talking about, where you could do one every day, use the Enlightener every day, have a professional Woods colonic unit therapy session every day, and still have waste pouring more than the day before. That's the gobsmacking reality of this. But it's so empowering, because once you get your head around that and accept it, you realize that you have the power to remediate the body. The body will be able to remediate itself when you can facilitate, or as you facilitate, this exiting of all this waste. Because when the waste leaves, the place where the waste was otherwise occupying, that space, that real estate that the waste was occupying, can go back to being clean, regenerative cells and tissues that can do and operate the way they were intended to, not be suppressed the way they were left to be. So that's the kind of waste we're talking about. So I have no problem with coffee enemas at all. The more we can remove blockages in the bile, the more we can motivate the glutathione to proliferate in the liver, and that's great. There's no problem with that at all. But don't make that your go-to, because that's not going to give you the results of the quantitative, the quantum of the waste that actually needs to leave. So let that be an adjunct, not your fundamental sort of approach, because that's not going to cleanse your organism. That's just going to give you a glutathione boost, trigger the liver to clean the bile ducts. It's not going to be enough that's not where your great healing is going to come from. Your great healing is going to come from the copious quantities of waste that leave the body. And that's why I keep on repeating, it's not about, we don't eat a clean diet for the sake of eating a clean diet. We eat a clean diet to tee up the quantities of waste that need to leave. If we don't put the soap on the dish, if we don't put the soap on the garment, it's not going to get clean. So we have to, the soap is the dietetics, the alkaline foods, they're the soap. And then we can't just soap up and not wash off. This is the washing off. So we soap up with the greens and the clean diet, and then we release it all, we wash it all off, we actually clean it with the water. But the water and the soap have to work in tandem. If you just had the one and not the other, it's not going to work. So if you just were to do colon irrigation but not tee up the alkaline soap in the tissues, you're going to have very negligible results, very unsatisfactory, minimal results. That's why often doctors say, oh, colonics don't really do anything. That's because they're not doing it in conjunction with the awakening diet. By the same token, if you have the awakening diet, but you don't apply the colon cleansing, you're just awakening all this waste that's never going to leave. You can't pass a square peg through a round hole. There's too much waste. It can't find a way out. So then you wind up getting breakouts on your skin. You wind up getting a sore throat. You wind up having joint issues, tooth issues, headaches, because the waste is trying to look for an exit and it can't find it. You give it the best exit possible when you allow it to leave in the most natural place possible, which is through the bowel. And then when you take that urgency off the body, all that energy can go toward doing everything that hasn't been able to be done because the waste was saturating the tissues. So it's just so perfect and so simple and so easy. Don't overcomplicate it. Just remember, awaken, release, pure, simple water will do the trick. However, if you do want to do something that will help move things along even more, I personally like to use hydrogen peroxide. And in the beginning, definitely just use the 3% hydrogen peroxide. Don't go getting the 12% or the 35% food grade. You can get 3% food grade if you want to use food grade. For the first 10 years of my cleansing, I just used the brown bottle hydrogen peroxides from the drugstore, and I had no problem with those at all. And my cleansing success was off the charts, and I could feel it unquestionably after I would have a session with the hydrogen peroxide. In fact, my mentor, Gil Jacobs, would probably, well, in a 5-gallon tank, we would use one of the medium size, or the small size, the 8 ounce, so an 8 ounce, 3% hydrogen peroxide in the 5-gallon tanks. And you'd feel it, it was intense, but the response that the body has to all this oxygen coming into it is unparalleled. It's completely, there's nothing that can compare with the hydrogen peroxide implant added to the water. But I want to just caution you that it is fire water. At 3%, it's not. It's very mild. But once you start looking at 12%, and then of course 35%, which is what I have here. This is the one I use. This is a South African brand, but when I'm in America, I use a different brand. But this is 35% hydrogen peroxide, and this is fire water. I used to tell my kids when they were little, when you see this around, don't think it's water. Sometimes I would leave them in the refrigerator, and it could look like water. So I always said to them, or I actually would write something on it like, "This is fire water. Do not touch. This is I don't want to say poison because it's not poison. Except any good thing can be poison if it's taken in too big of a dose. But it burns if it's used at the wrong in the wrong quantity. So this would be something where you put just a few drops into your enema, as opposed to with 3%, you could put 2, 3, 4 of the little caps, bottle tops into your enema, and then of course the 5-gallon tank you could use more. But that I would just ask you to defer to your colon hydrotherapist if you're going that route. And but if you always err on the side of caution, always use less. It will go to work anyway once you know when it's activating. So err on less, and then if you need to add a little bit more, but do it cautiously, because you don't want to have that sensation of basically what will happen is you'll feel like your insides want to go outside, and you do not want that to happen. So that's the big thing there, and I would I'm also just telling you what I do because I have to be very careful about how I speak about these things because I don't want anyone to hurt themselves and or have any kind of issue. So speak to your doctor, tick all those boxes, make sure that you are using it safely if you decide to use it. But that's the way I personally use it. And the wonderful thing about the hydrogen peroxide, the way what it does is it goes into the cells and tissue and pulls the waste and especially the gas pressure out. It collects. It's like it gathers the gas pressure. Like nothing else can do this. It's like, even as good as a coffee enema might be for the bile ducts and the glutathione and the liver, it will not gather this gas. And gas takes up at least as much, if not more, space in the body that it shouldn't be than waste because gas is so light and it expands. It goes into everything. So the way you feel after you've had the right amount and safely administered enema or colonic with addition of the hydrogen peroxide is absolutely unbelievable. You feel so light, you feel so clear, you feel like you've gained space, you've gained joy, elation, nirvana. It's just the ultimate. And if you've come off a flight or a long journey from somewhere, you've been sitting a long time, there's just so much putrefaction that goes on anyway, especially if you're not moving physically, if you're stuck in a place like at a desk all day or in an airplane for hours and hours. The body stagnates. Whenever the body stagnates, you have more noxious gases that are just rising up, and you don't want to leave those just to stay in the body and cause decay. Noxious gases will eat away at healthy tissue as much as acidic waste will. And one of the things on that note that I like to really underscore is that people get nervous about enemas or colonics and putting water up the wazoo, as I call it, but they'll let waste sit there in their tissue and eat away at their healthy tissue. So that waste that's sitting in your intestine, if it's not removed, if it's not moving as it should have been, again, I like to always say 2,000 years ago, before we were so modernized and our bodies became so defunct and our organs didn't function like they used to, and the foods we were eating were so much cleaner, and we didn't have food addictions, and we didn't overeat, all of these things, we would have far less of a problem of food sitting in our intestine causing that tissue to be eaten away. But now it's just what happens. So if you're not going to remove it, it's going to be eating away at your good stuff, which is why people have so many colon issues. They're losing their colons. Their colons are drooping and aren't able to sit up the way they're meant to. And it's basically an upside down U. There's a fairly amusing, I don't know what kind of doctor he is. I think he might be like an osteopath or a chiropractor, but he called himself Dr. Darrell Wolfe, and that's who he goes by. I find him very amusing. And sometimes I watch him, and he always talks about, he says people are pooping in their pelvis. And what he means is that the colon, which should be, sitting upright, is all drooping and like falling into the pelvis. And, it's not really funny. It kind of sounds funny, but it's really sad and really upsetting when you think that the integrity of the colon is lost to that degree that it's slouching inside your body. So how can things move properly? That tissue, why did it become that way? Well, too much matter, too much waste matter. It burned it, it pulled it down, and it sits there and it just eats away at the healthy tissue, at what's left of the healthy tissue. So that's why we do this. That's why it's so important. That's why it's just, thank goodness it exists. Every time you're thinking, I don't want to do my colon cleansing, I wish I didn't have to, just be grateful it exists. Find a way to get your head around the time spent. Do something meaningful with it. Take notes on your progress. Take notes on any area of your life. Make lists. Listen to podcasts. If you must watch a movie or something, just entertain yourself or educate yourself or inspire yourself in such a way that you use the time in a way that lifts you up. But mostly, where's your mind? Make sure your mind is lifting you up and reminding you how this is so valuable. It's the key The key is removing the waste. The key isn't how many green juices can you drink. The key is not how many days can you fast. The key is not how many hours can you dry fast. The key is not how well can you combine your food. The key is not how many greens can you eat or how high percentage of raw or green or vegan. The key is the waste leaving the body? Because those things are all pointless if the waste isn't leaving the body. When I hear about people doing water fast and they're not actually getting anything kinetic in their body, they're having dead water, and they're not moving their bowels, I think, ay. I mean, that's, first of all, it's like torture because you're not getting any vitality, any pleasure, any nourishment, and you're holding all the waste in. So at best, your body's going to start to maybe awaken some waste, but it's going to resettle, and you're just going to have to endure that poison. It's not going to leave. People who juice fast without colonics, what are they doing? They're wasting their time. They're going to lose a little weight, sure, but do they lose the waste, which is the real harbinger of their disease and all the problems? No. So it all has to be done correctly. This is intelligent cleansing. It's how it's supposed to be. We have to understand the mechanics of it and then put it to work and not miss a step, because every step is so critical. All right, I think that's pretty good for basics. You can, about halfway through, lie on your back, because once you've emptied a bit out of your left side, you want to get that water to your transverse colon and over to your cecum. You may or may not get your cecum. You may well get your cecum. You may get your cecum, half the time, and other times you don't. Don't overthink that. Just release as much as you can and know that whatever didn't leave in that enema session has gotten essential water that will help it leave on its own the next day. So you've only done something good. Even if you feel like, I wish I got more, or I feel like I need to get to work, or I need to do something, but I can't, continue to do this, but so I need to stop. Even if you feel a little bit full, your body will likely have a big movement the second you eat something. So if you feel like it wasn't complete, don't think you're going to feel indefinitely uncomfortable. Try to finish it. That's the best thing. And also do some inversions after. This is really big. Let me finish my point though. Try to finish it, but if you don't feel fully like it was complete, once you have something in the day, preferably don't have a green juice right away or even for a couple of hours if it wasn't thorough, especially if you've used the hydrogen peroxide, because that could create a lot of reverse pressure and make you feel horrible. So if you've had an unsuccessful enema, which occasionally can happen, and you feel frustrated, do not go have a green juice. Do not go have fruit. Do not go eat a watermelon. I did that once when I was breaking a fast, and I finished like a 5-day juice fast, and then I did the enema. The enema didn't really work on the 5th day, and nothing was happening. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to break my fast. And I broke it on watermelon, and all that liquid and the waste that hadn't left, it just basically made me feel horrible for like 5 or 6 hours after. So what you want to do is just calm everything down. If there's expansion, if there's water if there's waste that's being reconstituted that hasn't left and you feel kind of wonky, do nothing for a couple of hours, and then when you feel it's time to eat, have something like a carrot, salad, some steamed vegetables, avocado, and chances are you will suddenly need to go and have a movement. And whatever didn't leave, leaves, and then you feel really great. So that's usually the way it happens. The removal of waste is not always easy, but it has to be done. It's not easy to study for an important test, but it has to be done. And the pleasantness comes later. The success you get when you pass the test you studied for, the success you feel in your body when you cleared out a significant amount of waste that needed to go. This is all, it brings unmistakable results afterward. You feel great, and you're so happy you did it. There's never a time I've done my colon cleansing routine and thought, I kind of wish I hadn't done that. It's, in fact, the opposite. It's like note to self. If you feel that something's not right, your issues are in your tissues. And this is what Daryl Wolf says this as well. Dr. Wolf is always saying your issues are in your tissues. I think it's hilarious. It's so true, though. It's so true. And note to self, that's why. Because there was waste and there was pressure and it needed to leave. It was trying to leave. It needed a little bit of help. And then bingo, you remember what it's like to feel amazing. All right, that pretty much wraps it up, I think. And we can continue to talk about this topic, and we should, because repetition is super important when it comes to learning and understanding and embodying and anchoring, really applying this critical operation cleaning out what never did belong in your body. But now that it's there, we have to get it out, and there's a way, thankfully, to do it. We should be very joyful about that. Okay, guys, so much love, and until next time, I really wish you guys the happiest of cleansing the body, the mind, and the heart for the restoration of your soul. So much love. Bye for now.